From the point where we got the first trailers of this movie to now where we have the movie, people have been complaining that Furiosa looks far too digital. So I thought today I'll try to show you why that is. The biggest issue that Furiosa has and the reason why this movie shocked people with how digital it looks isn't even the movie itself. The reason lies about 10 years back. In 2015 we got Mad Max Fury Road, a movie that revolutionized action with a lot of practical stunts, but also, and this is more important, with a lot of digital adjustments. I think people often forget that most of this movie has VFX in it. It's just not CGI as we know it. For most of the action set pieces, they used something called digital compositing. For those of you who don't know what digital compositing is, it's basically when you digitally assemble multiple images to make one final image. In Mad Max Fury Road, they did that the whole time. For instance, in this scene, they filmed the explosion, filmed all of the surrounding cars, and filmed Tom Hardy on that pole all separately, and then composited it all into one image. This way everything looks real and you have something that couldn't have been done just purely practical. What adds to the realism in those shots as well is that basically all of the movie was shot on location in Namibia. So they did everything you see on screen in real life outside, but just separately. That's why Fury Road is so revolutionary. George Miller created a movie that had the perfect mix between practical stunt work and visual effects, which has to this day never been achieved again in such perfection. That said though, it doesn't mean that this movie was particularly fun to make. Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron basically hated each other after this. The actors were mostly confused about what they actually had to play because of a lack of communication, and because Tom Hardy wasn't a fan of George Miller's directing style, they also had some beef with each other during the production of this movie. So I could imagine that George Miller didn't want to repeat this, especially since he's in his 80s now. That's why for Furiosa they didn't go back to Namibia. They went to Australia, which at first glance may appear to be a good choice, because the Mad Max movies with Mel Gibson were also shot there. But then guess which other movie was shot there with Chris Hemsworth in the leading role, which had some terrible CGI? Correct, Thor: Love and Thunder. So it turns out in Australia there are quite a lot of studios you can use for filming, which George Miller took advantage of because he didn't want to repeat that horrendous experience he had. Just to be clear, there were probably some other factors playing into why they had to go to Australia instead of Namibia, so this is more a theory of mine than an actual fact. Anyway, that's part of the reason why Furiosa and Mad Max Saga look so much more fake than Fury Road, because they used less digital compositing of real stunts or backgrounds and used more person standing in front of green screen types of shots combined with full CG elements. All of that said though, sure, Furiosa looks a lot more digital compared to Fury Road, but if you compare this to all of the action movies of the last decade to see which one has the most mind-blowing scenes, Furiosa would still be near the top, because even though they used more CGI in this movie than in Fury Road, a ton of scenes were still shot in the outback of Australia and look stunning and realistic. The problem stems from the expectations we had for this movie, because we all expected a Fury Road 2.0, even though it was clear that George Miller would not want to go through that experience again in his 80s. That's why Furiosa seems so fake. Click here to check out my spoiler review of Furiosa. Thanks for watching, please subscribe, and bye!